Sorry about
Oh,
that.
yes. Yes. Everybody who is at the meeting today, by being at this meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. So
Mhm.
you're warned. And everybody else, thank you, everybody who is decided to join us today in this stream, and everybody else who is watching this meeting recorded. We are the Association of Energy Engineers, a professional organization dedicated to educating people on sustainable topics. And we have some special guests today, but before we get into that, I wanted to first open up the meeting to some announcements. So I know we have some new names who have joined this call today. I believe Destiny and Tamia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Tamia.
It's Tamia.
Uh,
Tania, okay.
Tamia. Oh, I butchered that. Oh my goodness.
It's okay.
Tamia and Destiny. We are we are a registered student organization at KSU, and so we have different responsibilities and formalities to take care of with this new semester moving forward. We are looking for people who are interested in leading and actually taking charge, getting the word out, and also becoming involved. And through this, we are holding elections. So elections, this will be an announcement that will be posted digitally, but verbally here, our elections are going to be held the first Friday after spring break, and it's going to close. The elections are going to close the first Friday of April. And so that gives 2 weeks to for everybody who wants to participate to decide whether or not they want to become an officer. So we welcome you to that. Keep an eye out on that. With this semester moving forward, we are looking for new people to help promote meetings like the one you are at today. And with that being said, I wanted to I wanted to hand it off to Lance.
Okay, thank you, Cornell. My name is Lance Su. I am the secretary of the KSU chapter of AEE, and I thank you all for joining our meeting today. Special thanks to our guest panelists as well. I will introduce them further later, but I also wanted to get some things over with our club. So currently we have 17 AEE members that are from KSU, and all of them are KSU AEE chapter members, so congratulations. If you're here now, I really appreciate that you joined, because for every member that joins, that determines the amount of funding that our club gets from AEE. So in order to continue supporting our club in the future, the participation in future meetings is important. And we use this money for, setting up meetings, food money if we met up in person. So we're online, so it doesn't really apply. But we also use this funding for our projects, including our solar decathlon, which Eric will introduce later. And if you are currently a guest and you would like to join AEE and support us, the annual membership fee is $15. It's just $15, so it's not that expensive, and it lasts for the entire year, and you can enjoy all the perks of AEE, which also includes scholarships if you're interested in that. I will send out another announcement probably in a month, highlighting some of these benefits, including the scholarship, but I hope you will look into those. And Carnell has posted a link to AEE membership applications in the meeting chat. So if you would like to do that now, please go there. I will now hand off the announcements to Sherry, which is our treasurer.
Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. And I'm Sheree. I'm Sheree Rucker, the treasurer. And if anyone ever has any financial issues, just come to me and I'll try to like help you with them, and I'll direct you, to a solution. And also I want to say, if you pay dues for the Solar Decathlon competition, you will be reimbursed because we got that financially handled. So you will get your money back. And I'm going to pass your attention back to Lance.
All right, thank you, Sherry. So we'll have future meetings in February, March to April, so keep your eyes peeled out on that. And now I will introduce our speakers. Actually, no, before we introduce our speakers, I want to introduce the Solar Decathlon. Speaking about that, Eric, would you like to introduce your Solar Decathlon group?
So one of the things that I wanted to do is make sure that everybody realizes at least one of the ways that we are not only talking about sustainability, but we're also trying to walk the walk and do what Carnell said, promote and learn about sustainability. One of the ways we do that is participate in the Solar Decathlon, which is it's been running for about 20 years. When intercollegiate international teams were encouraged to build ultra-efficient and innovative solar-powered demonstration houses on mobile home chassis. I especially like this particular picture because this is Georgia Tech's entry, so Atlanta, and the sign they had out there, in which case it was 20 teams, but at the end of the day, it's billions of winners if we manage to promote that cause to future engineers. So KSU is going to enter in 2021. The competition's grown a bit, so it's still intercollegiate international ultra, but they have design only portions of it as well, and specifically office buildings. So we're working with the architecture department to have a 2021 entry, and we'll be evaluated ultimately on whether or not we are solar ready, meaning we have a low energy use intensity. I'm assuming everyone can see these slides.
I do not see them actually.
Dang.
No, we don't see them.
Nope, Eric, you're lost.
Yep. I'm right back. Thankfully, there was no pretty pictures hardly yet. So,
yeah, but we weren't really planning
one.
on bringing slides in this. Okay, there we go. That's perfect.
Okay, so this is where we started, including that Georgia Tech sign. We're working with the architecture department to build, to design a building, design only office, solar ready. It may indeed have solar panels on it, probably will, but the event only requires us to be solar ready. And then we'll be evaluated in how solar ready we are, whether our energy use intensity. And one of the key points that I wanted to make is that we'll be evaluated from a lot of different points of view. How attractive the architecture is, how good our engineering is, whether or not we could potentially market this or pull together the funding to make it happen, and finally, how we present ourselves and our project. This project causes us to think about a lot of things, from water, for example. This would be the way that you would typically build a code building. And this would be our proposal, where we start doing things like catching rainwater to use in toilets and recycling rainwater to use in toilets. And we are taking the code 1.6 gallons per flush and substituting a little bit more modern, a little more efficient toilet. The net result is, since we're talking about learning sustainability, man, we could save a lot of water here. That would be 1.3 million gallons of water per year, not processed. So that's less chlorine, that's less energy to pump water, that's less space in the sewers when it rains. So we end up talking in sustainability about people, place, and planet. So people, place, and profit. People, that's correct. People, planet, profit. So here's your profit, right? Is less water bills. Here's some of your planet in less sewage overflows, less chemical processing, stuff like that. And in this case, it's without a compromise to the people in the building. We end up talking about HVAC. So when you start looking into maybe separating the latent and sensible loads, you can really reduce your duct sizes because air is not very efficient at carrying the heat. And we can use water to carry the sensible load conditioning into the building. Another bonus of this is that we aren't circulating around large volumes of air that need to be recirculated. So that means we can target the air we want to get rid of and the air we want to bring in, which will have some positive effects, as we'll see. And that also allows us to do things like use large ice tanks to handle some of the loads that's well mated to. For example, when you're doing dehumidification, you typically want to target around 40-degree cooling coil. So 33-degree water coming out of an ice bath, that pairs up rather well. Unfortunately, we need to think a little bit about profit because, well, this is what the industry's used to, and this has a little higher first cost until you start realizing that a traditional system takes a lot of space and we can start reducing floor-to-floor heights. Instead of a typical 13 foot, we can get down to 11. So in the case of the solar decathlon, we're talking about an 8-story building. If you take 2 feet out of each of those 8 stories, well, all of a sudden you can get 9 stories in an 8-story exterior. And from a people perspective, this kind of thing works out nice for a variety of reasons. One of which is that we can use displacement ventilation. Since we aren't really doing a dilution-based kind of model, we can bring in cool air slowly at the floor, use it to fill the room and drive all the hot air out the top. So compared to typical traditional ventilation, which projects cool air across the room at a relatively speaking high velocity, which is kind of a no-no when you start thinking about COVID. You do not want to move air across an infected person toward an uninfected person. And we can keep going in this picture, or we can come back and ask questions, but I'm hitting some of the high points. So one of our main targets is going to be energy use intensity, and this slide's about making sure people understand what that means. So a BTU is an energy unit that equates to what it takes to raise 1 pound of water 1 degree F. That also happens to be approximately the amount of energy embodied in a match. So when you burn it, it gives off 1 BTU of energy. And you can see I've got 1 BTU per square foot here, 1 match per square foot. And if that's all the energy it takes to heat and cool that building over a year, that would be 1 BTU per square foot per year. And I know one of the discussions we've also had is there's no per person in here. So buildings that have low number of people automatically tend to end up with a lower energy use intensity. So, so that might get into a social equity kind of a conversation. So our goal is to get down to 20,000 BTU per square foot per year. A code-built building is on the order of 40,000 or 40 kilobtu per square foot per year based on some of the modeling I'm doing. And one of the keys to getting this energy use down is going to be modeling, because it reveals that you end up with some interesting and unexpected integrations. For example, typically you think small windows, right? Because that's more insulated area, less glass. But if you handle the south wall well, you do your shading well, you find that there's not really a trade-off on an annual basis for window-to-wall, large window-to-wall ratios, because the heating benefit you pick up in the winter outweighs the losses in the summer. And I like ultimately that leads to one of the high points, I think, of this whole conversation, is integrative design, right? Because we just talked about the architect working with the mechanical guys, working with the modelers. And I like this picture because South Face is kind of leading the way. And in this picture, we see electricity and water together in that solar roof with a gutter to collect the rainwater. We see the roofer and the gardener working together because this isn't outside the building. This is the roof of the building. So you can see the nice landscaping they've done on the roof. And it leads also to conversations where maybe it's resilience versus sustainability, right? If they have that water tank, how much water level do they keep in this tank, right? Because resilience, waiting for that hurricane to come in and kill your water pressure or whatever, resilience is asking you to have a large water storage on tap, and sustainability is asking you for, before the next rain comes, you to have drained this tank or to have this tank never overflow, right? So it never starts with a high level and never overflows. So this leads to some interesting engineering conversations, not only about water flow, but in a solar system, what size battery do you need? Do you have it so that you're running completely off the battery from 2 to 8 p.m., which is awesome from a sustainability perspective, but bad from a resilience perspective if power goes down at 7 p.m. So ultimately, what I hope to get out of this project is for all of us students to learn about teamwork for a greater good, whether that's the students working together on this project or teams of people coming up with the funding to make a solar project work or whatever. By working together, we can create more than just the individuals can create. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction that I think kind of shows that we're walking the walk. We're trying to, as students, think and advance things. So ultimately, we're going to learn more from you guys than you're going to learn from us, but we're trying, is the point.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, so that's like a little insight of some of the things that we do in AEE. So thank you, Mr. Marlow. So yeah, if you're interested in joining AEE, Carnell posted a link in the chat, and just go ahead and join, or just let me know later, let any of us know, and we can send you more information about it. But without further ado, I will introduce our panelists now, starting with Mr. Burgener, who helped us get this panel going. Would you like to introduce yourself, Bernie?
I'm muting myself too. Yes, I'm Bernie Burgener. Thank you very much for having us. Great to be here. And let me just say this right at the beginning. We're here for you. So we don't have we don't make presentations to you. We're here so you can ask the questions you want to answer from people who have sustainability somewhere in the job description and sort of do it in the trenches. So we're here for you. I am with the Regional Center of Expertise here in Atlanta. You probably heard of it. KSU is part of it. This network is all about implementing the Sustainable Development Goals via education, and we have this Speakers Bureau that Destiny Whitaker and myself, we co-lead, and we bring panels together going to events like this one, the student groups. Sometimes classes, individual classes with professors, sometimes campus-wide events. We go to companies. That's what brings us here. I currently, as far as my day job goes, I lead the Greenhouse Accelerator. We help early-stage clean tech companies build their businesses. Rainwater collection, energy management, renewable energy, food diversion from landfill, that kind of thing. Prior to that, my first job actually after college, I'm an economist by training. I worked with an investment company in South America, helping bring funding to small companies there. And then I worked for about 20 plus years with a global water treatment company out of Atlanta, with subsidiaries all over the globe, essentially helping business development, especially when it came to making acquisitions. So I helped our subsidiaries across the globe acquire companies to help them achieve their strategies. So much for me. I'm going to pass it on to maybe Rawad to give a brief introduction of who you are.
Okay.
Sure, thanks, Bernie. So I'm Rawad Saab. I'm from Lebanon. My background is in electrical engineering, and I also have an MBA. And I'm currently working at Southbase, featured in Eric's presentation. I divide my time between doing kind of the work that Eric went through, what we call energy assessments, and the other half of my time is spent doing research on the built environment. My previous work experience was in a totally different domain. I was in the oil and gas services field, not by by want, but just kind of by circumstance. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for you, Mr. Marlow?
Well, good afternoon. I'm James Marlow. I'm the founder of Clean Energy Advisors. I was also the CEO and president and co-founder of Radiant Solar. I've worked for companies like Lotus Development, IBM, and Yahoo. So I've really been a technology, software, digital person. I've been in the clean energy, solar, energy storage space since 2007. I'm also involved in policy, and really just not much in solar I haven't done. We've worked on, very, very small, R&D projects with Georgia Tech. We created some patents with Georgia Tech on balance of systems. We've worked on 100 megawatt plants. We've done projects like one of my favorites is the Jekyll Island project built on a landfill. We've done projects on top of Georgia Tech. We've done projects at the University of Georgia. We've done a small project at KSU at Southern Poly many years ago. So there's just an awful lot of things that we've done. I've been directly involved in over 350 projects, and now I consult with people that work on hundreds of projects.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Mr. Marlow. So we have some questions that we'll go over now, some prepared questions. But if anybody at all has any questions that they want to ask that just comes up, just type it in a chat or raise your hand or just unmute your microphone and you'll just let them know actually what questions you have, and just keep the conversation going. This meeting is planned to last until 7, just in case we do get a lot of questions, but if we end earlier than that, that's completely okay. But I'm hoping that we will get a good discussion going. So one of the few general questions we have the introduction. We already did that. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. We kind of already went over that. And our next question is, what do you think is sustainability in your own words? I guess we can start with who wants to go first?
Okay, well, I can take it on a bit quickly. Okay. I actually stay away from the use of the word sustainability a lot. I call it impact accountability.
Okay.
Mainly because sustainability has a lot of baggage. I think it's a great name. It's actually a better name than in many other languages. In English, it works well, but it comes with baggage. And when you think about it, sustainability is a noun. It talks about an outcome. So the danger when talking in terms of sustainability is you tell people what to do, and they don't want to be told what to do. So when I'm talking about impact accountability, I'm not telling them what to do, but I am asking you to make your decisions in light of all the consequences your actions have on others. Coming back to the PPP you talked about earlier, people, planets, profit. That's my take on sustainability.
All right, that's interesting. What about, yeah, I guess we'll go to Mr. Saab. So what do you think is sustainability in your own words?
I tend to think of it as a harmony between us and our natural environment. That's how I look at it. But this is just for a philosophical view. As an engineer, like I find myself, kind of dealing with just the data and the numbers. So it's very rarely do I kind of like step back and look at the big picture. So when I do, it's kind of more of a dream or a vision of what I want to see. And so that's why I describe it as living in harmony with nature. And, when I talk about people, it includes everything in it, like, people, equity between people, like, so all of those important values, are there, when you are in harmony with your environment. So this is how I look at it.
And that's really interesting because there are entire fields of engineering dedicated to fighting against nature, which is kind of funny. But yes, I think that's a good viewpoint, being in harmony of nature. So what about you, Mr. Marlow? What is sustainability in your own? We have a question in the chat, actually. Destiny, you had a question?
Yes. Regarding sustainability, I once had a conversation with someone and they mentioned that sustainability, we are beyond that point. We need to, in fact, become more involved in regeneration. So they were saying ditch the term of sustainability. How truthful do you believe that statement is?
Would you like to go, Mr. Marlow? You haven't spoken.
Well, I need to make a comment first. Eric, I loved what you presented. I'm so glad you're doing a decathlon house. I think that's a wonderful learning experience. And I really like what Bernie and Rod said. I mean, Rod was very eloquent in living in harmony. When I like the term sustainability, I don't like phrases like green, which tend to be divisive. I mean, a lot of conservative-leaning people hate that phrase, and you're alienating people with bad message. In sustainability, I actually like Rob. I like to think it up higher. I mean, sustainability is how does your organization, your company, your family, how do they thrive 100 years in the future? So sustainability at all elements, not just conservation of resources, conservation of energy or water, which are all wonderful traits or attributes. But if you're an educational institution, you need to be, creating great, minds, creating great leaders, creating great research. You need to be accomplishing your mission with a 100-year time frame. And I try to think in terms more and more in terms of total ecosystem and also transdisciplinary thinking, and not just interdisciplinary, but transdisciplinary thinking. So, Rod and I, and all my friends at Southface, we're usually very, very close on the same page. Now, the question about beyond sustainability, no, sustainability is a journey. You're never there. I mean, if you're thinking about building a colony on Mars, sustainability means something very different, where you have to create oxygen, bring resources. So, each environment has unique characteristics and unique elements, but we need to really learn how to, use less. Like right now, plastics are such a wonderful material, and we're being so stupid about how we use them. When we're just discarding them into, the great river basins of the world, and they go in the oceans, and it's becoming a massive problem. But yet, it's a wonderful material, and we need to use it intelligently.
Okay. So rephrasing Destiny's question, what do you say to those people who say that sustainability isn't something we should focus on? What were you? Can you rephrase your question again, Destiny?
They mentioned that sustainability is too, I would say, simple of a solution for the problems that we're facing. They
Mhm.
phrase it as regeneration, saying that we need to actually fix the problems that we created rather than creating a solution within the problems we're living in.
Well, I agree with that. You know, I wouldn't say we're beyond sustainability. We're just getting started, but we need to think, you know, very holistically. We need to think, you know, about integration of all these, you know, elements of the ecosystem. And air and water are pretty important to humans, but we also need to invent a new social order. We need to build new cultures to be more inclusive. So, you know, we need to think about the big picture, the known universe.
If I may add something, Destiny, I think like an example that would give you a good answer to your question would be if you look at the Candida building. I think that's maybe where your question is coming from. Sustainability in the sense that just reducing our use is probably not enough. But if you look at the Candida building, which goes back to what James was talking about, like if you look at the whole system it's in, so the Candida building is an example of a living building that doesn't take around from its environment, it gives back to its environment. So in that sense, it can be said that, you know, like in that case, sustainability wasn't enough. We went above and beyond and like regenerated stuff back into the ecosystem. So I guess if that's where you're coming from, yeah, it makes sense. We can no longer just rely on reducing our use. We gotta think bigger than that.
All right,
I
Eric.
really wish we had started with conservation as opposed to recycling. I meet so many people that are recycling zealots, and we all know, you know, that recycling doesn't work anymore. If it ever, it never did. And you know, if we could think about conservation, and you know, from an energy system standpoint, you know, the Candida building is a positive energy building. It actually creates more energy than it uses. So, you know, thinking, you know, in a wholly new way, to being, you know, in a new paradigm. You know, we need entirely new structures. You know, I'm an ecotopian, you know, in principle, so that we need to think about, as Rod said, being in harmony, but, you know, not being a, you know, a parasite on our environments or our ecosystems.
Did you want to say something, Eric?
I just wanted to make sure we didn't get off the initial subject too quickly. For example, Miss Destiny was creating a conversation of whether or not we go from sustainability to regeneration. When you have those conversations, first you have to believe that the Earth's not so big that we have plenty left to consume, right? Which is a large chunk of the population is still way out there. So I think this is a matter of degree to people who think that we haven't filled the air with smoke yet, right? Or pick your favorite way of saying it, right? The solution to pollution is dilution, people, right? It isn't how much bad stuff they make. It's can they still dilute it, right? And you see that a lot in a variety of places, right? America still uses auto emission standards that are in parts per million instead of parts, which is a little unusual in the world, right? So I just wanted to make sure that and I'm not sure we're going to solve that problem now, but there's a bigger political visual thing than whether or not we go from sustainable to regenerative. That's a matter of degree compared to a bigger football, I think.
If I can just
that's all I was trying to do. I didn't have a specific question. I just wanted to make sure we weren't dropping it before we.
Yeah, if I can just add to that.
Mr. Bernie's talking, but that's part of what I was going to, that's where my thought process started, because a lot of what he was talking about was how do you not alienate people with words like sustainability or regeneration, right? If nothing's broken, if you're not breaking anything, sustainability is not even a conversation. So can you spin it in like giving back or use less or more profit, or can you find a way to make it economically or some other way advantageous to people? Sorry, that's all I was trying to do.
If I could jump in, this is actually a topic I enjoy discussing. And to me, we need to invent a new vocabulary. When I was in the early days of the personal computer and software, we had to invent a new vocabulary. We don't have the right descriptors. And I agree sustainability is a weak term, but it's the best one we have right now. Clean energy and sustainability, they're phrases that actually have some connection, but we need a new paradigm and new vocabulary. And I'm counting on KSU students to be part of that. But we need to think win-win-win, but we're in kind of a me mind era. And people think that it's still a zero-sum game. I can't tell you how often I work with business people that think it's a zero-sum game, and that if you win, utility people think if solar energy wins, we lose. And I think their mindset is wrong. And that, I'm trying to create value for utilities, for consumers, for prosumers. So we need a new vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. You want to say something earlier, Bernie?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the same point that we hear all over here. Again, coming back to defining sustainability, right? James said earlier, it's something different in the future, it's something different in different industries, it's something different in different geographies. The danger I see with regeneration is that it really seems to focus more on the environmental piece of sustainability when it is really that triple bottom line, right? It's all three. It's people, profits, planet, where Eric was going as well, and Rawad and James as well. We need to keep our minds open to our impacts, and just like James says, avoid terms that close people's minds immediately because they have a very narrow definition of that word. We need to meet them where they are and use the terminology that gets us to discuss the important things.
Gabriel, your mic is on, just letting you know. Okay, yeah, I hope you got that. Did you have a question, Destiny?
I just wanted to comment on what Bernie said. That was their argument, that the terminology was too minuscule for what is going on and what the problem is and the solution to the problems. So I do agree that we have to, come up with new terminology that's susceptible to the things that are affecting our world today. And as everyone else said, it's going to change years from now and it's different from when it was then. But it's just a matter of creating one that's appropriate for what we're experiencing.
So yeah, that was a good question. I'm glad we went over that. Now to get back in the general topic of sustainability, where do you see sustainability and a sustainability industry in the future? Is it going to be a profitable industry? Are companies going to be doing this because it's profitable? What are your views on that?
Absolutely. You have to build an economic model, and you have to be able to, to sell this in economic terms. You don't get much done in the business world without understanding the needs of the chief operating officer or the chief financial officer. And you've sometimes got to, if I'm in a boardroom, usually that's the most difficult person to win. And if you don't have an economic story and a rationale and a payback and an ROI, you're probably not going to get anything done. You're going to lose that room pretty quickly.
Okay. And for Mr. Saab, Mr. Burgener, do you have any views on that?
Okay, I can go. One more fundamental point. You were talking in terms of sustainability industry. I think that's a dangerous misnomer in multiple ways, because there is not a sustainability industry. Sustainability, sustainable practices is not something that is a business function that you learn. It's actually a way to do business in all the functions you you may have, whether it's an accountant, a plant manager, a marketing person, a salesperson. There is sustainability to be considered in all of these functions. It goes across them. The danger in thinking it differently is that in a company, people think, well, we have the sustainability group in our office on the 6th floor. They do that. I don't need to worry about it. No, they're just there to coordinate things and to help you do things sustainably. But it's really an aspect of how you make your decisions that's part of functions all across the company, which I think has an important consequence for you as students, because you're unlikely to find a job in sustainability. You're going to be hired more likely because you're a great engineer or a great accountant or whatever it is. Skills, functional skills that you can bring to a team who has to solve problems. And it's there around your job as an accountant or engineer that you can make sure that your team makes these decisions sustainably with the bigger picture in mind, where that flows into the process.
Okay, Eric?
I completely agree with Bernie in a big picture and ideal scenario. Two things that made me think of. One is I agree with him that you're doing something dangerous when you say the sustainability field, right? Because that also means it's going to change with the mood of the country or what's faddish or what's popular or whatever, right? That if you think of it as I'm doing it for sustainability instead of I'm doing it because this is the best way to do business or whatever. The other is I have seen some companies that do exactly what he's talking about. There's a mechanical, electrical, plumbing company that I considered, and they really, really wanted me to make a decision up front on whether I wanted to be an MEP engineer or I wanted to be a sustainability person. And they were going to send me to the sustainability department, in which case that was how to do lead paperwork or whatever. In which case, from that point of view, say working for USGBC, maybe that is a sustainability industry, right?
Mr. Saab?
Yeah, I would just echo what they said. Sustainability has to be a way of doing business and not necessarily a company or a business. And like Eric said, you can be a mechanical engineer, and if you install a bunch of VFDs on the pumps you have in your factory, you would have done way more sustainability than a guy who maybe does PR or social media, or have you how it is in a lot of the business world, where they change it into an individual kind of choice, are you not using straws or whatever? So again, sustainability can mean so many different things, unfortunately. So I would echo what they said. It's a way of doing business going forward, rather than a specific industry or company or field or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I clarified that. That's something I needed to know, actually. But yeah, that's good that we went over that. And I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what advice do you have for students who want to get jobs in the engineering field and think of a sustainable mindset? What advice do you have for students that want to help the environment as engineers and accountants and other fields like that?
Can we tie this into how Mr. Saab did an interesting pivot in the way he had to coach it as if he was in an industry not of choice, right? So it's interesting the way he thought about his pivot and where he was.
Okay. Yeah. Would you like to go into that, Mr. Saab?
Sure. So, as I briefly said in my bio, I was going to the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, and that was in, I guess, 2011, that would have been my final year. Pretty much, we didn't have any renewable energy sustainability curriculum even. And then during my final year, I started taking all these new courses, and I got hooked. But like I said, it was the whole industry. I don't think it's caught up till now. I don't go back often, but I'm not really, apart maybe from the Gulf region, is seeing a bit of a emergence in kind of going after renewable energy, sustainability, energy efficiency. But when I graduated, it wasn't an option. So for students who are faced with that kind of choice, I just decided to go into just an electrical engineering career and just improve my skills and capitalize on the experiences that I got. I traveled to a bunch of different places. I went to the site in the middle of the desert in Algeria, where they were building the oil refinery, and worked as an electrical engineer there, dealing with substations and stuff like that. Like totally unrelated to the field that I'm currently working in, but it's a cliche, but you do learn all the things you need to function in the workplace. You learn all the skills you need, and then honestly, especially in these days, whatever your passion is, you can kind of learn it and go after it yourself. Just try to, as much as possible, go with the flow and gather the information you need. And how I did it was, I knew eventually I needed to be in the US. So I applied for an MBA because I also knew that an engineering background with the business background is really good and allows you to understand both dynamics of sustainability. You can understand the technical aspects, but you also understand the difficulties around adopting it. You understand how to talk to different stakeholders, so you can talk to the engineering people, but you can also present your ideas to the CFO, who will be the deciding factor 99% of the time. So that's why I got my MBA. And in the meantime, to kind of just stay close to the field, I studied on my own the lead green associate, just to stay up to date on what the sustainability field looks like, and took a bunch of. There was the San Diego SDG&E Innovation Center. They provided some courses. I signed up for courses on energy efficiency and stuff like that, and that combination kind of provided me a good background that allowed me to land my job at Southface. So it was kind of a very windy road, but I just kind of tried to pick and choose as I went along what pivot to take, and eventually I wound up here.
Okay. And speaking of which, I don't actually know that much about Southface, so can I hear a little bit more about that for the students here who are also unfamiliar?
Sure. So I've been with Southface for about a year and a half. I'm part of the engineering and education and research group. So we do the energy assessment work. Primarily, we work with other nonprofits. So we go to these nonprofits and we do energy assessments for them. We look at their buildings holistically, and we give them reports, explaining to them how they consume their energy and where all their opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable energy are. And we also give them some money to help do those improvements. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is we do research into, as I said, into the built environment. Currently, we're doing a research on, for example, HVAC and HVAC installations, and how you can have some apps and tools that you can install on an HVAC for fault detection, and how we're going to study how much that ends up saving energy and saving callback times for technicians and stuff like that. And this is a project from the DOE, Department of Energy, which we usually collaborate with on projects. And this is just my group, but Southface as a whole has a bunch of other groups. So we have a policy team that works on policies, the energy code and stuff like that. And we have a technical services team. We have a program kind of similar to LEED called Earthcraft for certifying buildings. So this is in short what we do at Southface.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's very informative. So now here are some of the more specific questions that we have for some of you. So Sherry asked this, does your company, do your companies focus more on designing revolutionary innovations or more so tweaking modern technology to achieve its highest sustainability performance? What type electrical designs do you feel encourages sustainability the most and why? This is for Mr. Saab.
That's a very interesting question. So we've actually been having an internal dialogue about this because we work with nonprofits, a lot of times they're very cash strapped. So even though in our energy assessments and reports, we try to, like go as far as possible with how energy efficient we can make the building. A lot of times though, these nonprofits end up doing just the low hanging fruit work. And again, it's because of, the circumstances that this is how much money they have and this is how much they can afford. So a lot of times we end up not like looking for the most innovative solution. We end up looking at the most cost-effective solution for our clients. But again, this is just in our case because, the type of clients we work for don't have a lot of capital. But we're starting to think about this and we're starting to, experiment or, play around with other financial models that can help us achieve innovation with, even nonprofits. So we're looking at green revolving loans. We're looking at things like CPAs, which are like purchase agreements for solar. We're looking at different financial structures that allow us to be innovative in our work with our grantees.
Okay. Tanya, do you have a question?
Yes, this is a little off topic, but I was just wondering what your opinion on this would be. Do you guys think that we can still maintain like a capitalistic mindset while promoting sustainability? Like, do you think that we can be as sustainable as we can while still being capitalists?
I'd like to take that one. I happen to be a conscious capitalist, and I'm a student of conscious capitalism, and I think we can. I think, as I said earlier, I am an ecotopian. I want us to go as fast as we possibly can, but I don't want to do it with a harsh economic dislocation. We don't want to put millions of people out of work in that transition and rebuild from a very damaged structure. So we want to build a transition. And I would encourage you to learn about conscious capitalism. It's kind of the bridge between, stakeholder versus shareholder capitalism, kind of the Milton Friedman view, which Milton Friedman was wrong then, wrong now, will always be wrong, and that we need to think win-win, and we need to build on beneficial corps and other business structures that use innovative new techniques for organization, for capitalization, and accelerating our way into a sustainable, clean energy future.
Good question, Tanya. Okay, so for our next specific question.
And I might add one thing to that. My son Zachary, the Marxist, would disagree with me, and he thinks that we just have to blow it all up and start over. If you look at the Great Depression, that's not a very good way to do it. Or you look at World War II, not a very good way to do it. But those are the two debates we often have with him, and I try to stop them before they become arguments.
Eric, did you want to say something?
I think that James is saying the same basic thing that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I'm not sure whether we'll ever get there. Usually the outcome of my thought is that it comes down to educating people, right? How do you create the bulk of the people having a conscience? How do you create it so that it's not me, me, me? And then that addresses a lot of the problems in the long run. Without the disconnects and stuff, it just takes generations, unfortunately, I think.
Behavioral change always takes a generation. And fortunately, we've got some really bright students all over the world, and I have a lot of faith and hope in our students. But, we certainly need to, invent new paradigms, new approaches, new vocabulary. We need to think about this in a very bold way, but you have to get there. You have to transition. It's not a switch, I think a lot of Bernie followers think it's a switch, and if we just flip that switch, everything will be, really, really great. And it is a journey and a path, and sometimes it's very, very difficult to transition. And I have, as an innovator and a person that's done a lot of cutting edge work over the years, you get a lot of rejection, you have a lot of problems, but you also get the rewards of seeing that progress. And in the early days of the personal computer, which I was a foot soldier in, we had to teach people, well, why would I need a personal computer? What's a word processor? What is email? What is texting? I was on the front lines of all that, and now you carry a supercomputer in your pocket that costs less than $1,000, and you think that's always been the case.
No, not all phones are cheaper than $1,000, but that's a good point. Did you want to say something, Bernie?
Yeah, just to that question about capitalism, what I think is fundamentally wrong within the capitalism we have today is how we measure success. Because the only thing we measure is how well we do with the money we've been given as a company. And we measure it in our financial statements. But it doesn't take only money to make a door or an airplane or shoes. It takes people. It takes materials. We are not these other, the PPPs, right? People, profits, planet. We're not measuring how our activities as a company, speaking of a business, impact those. We only measure those that are some way flowing into the financial statements. And that goes to behavioral change, because these are incentives. That's what incentivizes us to make certain decisions. And we won't be able to change people's or companies' behavior if whether they emitting soot out of their chimney or a toxic chemical in the wastewater doesn't appear anywhere in the numbers they use to calculate their success. So we need to get to systems, and there's a lot of that happening, the global reporting initiatives. There's a lot of data, structure, tools, concepts available to broaden those metrics, and a lot of companies that are now starting to take this into account.
All right, we have 2 raised hands. I'll let Samuel go first. Did you have something to say, Samuel?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So what I was kind of heard from that was we'd have to include a cost of environmental cost into a business plan. So if a power plant generates X number of tons of carbon into the atmosphere a year, they'd be charged so much in taxes. But if we were to start taxing at the rate we're dumping, wouldn't that create some sort of uproar, like either with just the companies or the public, because now energy prices would skyrocket? How would you combat that, and how would you incentivize these power plants to go completely clean without making them have to raise the kilowatt hour price on the end consumer?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I mean, Bernie's right. We need a new accounting system. The accountants have screwed things up pretty badly, and that we need to shift from maximizing profits to optimizing operations. So a simple example of that would be Georgia. We bought all that cheap coal to make low-cost electricity, and now we're going to spend $7 billion to clean up that cheap coal. So we need to look at all the costs, the true cost, the life cycle cost, the levelized cost of energy, the true externalities, the health cost. We need to look at the total cost and not just first cost. Americans are very focused on first cost and not on life cycle costing, or the levelized cost of energy, for example, in your energy example. The LCOE is really where the focus should be, not on the first cost.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess Tommy had a question too, so I'll let her go first and then you, Bernie.
My question was pretty similar to Sam's. I was just gonna ask about like what type of incentives do you guys think we can give to individuals and to like larger scale companies to make them be more sustainable, and if you guys believe that incentives will do anything, since humans are pretty selfish, unfortunately it's human nature and we are always thinking about ourselves. Like, do we need to have an incentive for us to care about the future and care about future generations?
Well, today we do, and that typically it requires a 20% savings, a system that's 20% cheaper in order to disrupt the current method of doing that. An example of that would be an electric vehicle, which Consumer Reports recently said is cheaper to drive in a total cost of ownership than an internal combustion engine. So when you're able to get a safer car that doesn't crash into somebody in front of you in an accident, protects you and your friends and your family, and it's also a more comfortable car, but it's also cheaper to drive because it's using electricity as opposed to gasoline. You don't have oil changes. You have thousands less parts, so you have a lot less maintenance and a longer lifespan. You know, Saul Griffith with Other Lab and Rewiring America is talking about a vision of a better future. You know, the doomsdayers around climate, you know, are only going to win a certain portion of our audience. We need to show a better life, a better home, a more environmentally friendly home, but also a quieter home, one with daylighting, one with better air quality, one that's healthier for people with sensitivities. So, you know, we've got to build better visions, better vocabulary, and not just talk about environmental reduction or environmental savings or reduced environmental impact.
That's a good point. Did you want to say something, Bernie, about that?
Yeah, about just this cost thing. I get all these comments and questions, cost. They say, what do you say to somebody who says, we can't afford to raise costs? I can't afford to pay more. These companies go out of business when they have to pay. The thing to do is to tell them and to explain to them, we are not raising costs. We have these costs today. That just happened not to show up on your P&L, your profit and loss statement, so it's not a cost to you. But if you pollute the water with some toxic chemicals that come out of your plant, fish is going to die, people are going to die, other folks are carrying those costs that should really be part of the calculation how much it costs to reduce a kilowatt of energy. That's where James was saying earlier about not letting them externalize these, make sure they show up in the full costs of what we do. And that's a difficult job to explain and to support, because you have to connect these dots and you have to bring into this discussion these other costs that we don't see, therefore we don't care, but they have to be costs. All the way to, you know, even if we subsidize the production of cotton in Louisiana, it eliminates the life's opportunities to make some income for the family, for farmers in Chad who have higher costs and compete with the same product on a global price level. That's also a consequence of certain actions here. So it's difficult to make this obvious, to have always the data present to bring, but to opening up people's understanding what costs are and what the right incentives should be to make the right decisions is something we just need to keep in mind as we make those decisions and make sure we really grasp all the consequences of our actions.
All right. Well, then I'll get to the next specific question that we have down. And this is also for Mr. Saab. As a project manager, how do you decide what level of sustainability you want your team to achieve for a project? Is there a baseline requirement? Do you have a proudest electrical design that you got to implement for a project? And this is from Sherry as well.
Yeah, so like I said, every project is different based on the kind of building that it is, but as a general principle, we try to implement as much energy efficiency improvements as possible to reduce the energy consumption as much as possible, because at the end of the day, every dollar saved is going to go towards the mission of the nonprofit that we are helping, so it's really important to us. So, but in terms of, that's the main consideration that we're looking at. In terms of how far do we go with sustainability, when we do the report, we list everything and we calculate everything that could be improved about the building. That's always how we do it. But then it's basically up to the grantee. They pick and choose which projects they want to implement based on need, based on priority, and based on the money that they have. So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Okay. Sounds good. And Eric, would you like to say something?
So is he saying purely first cost, or do you ever get into return on investment?
We look at it all ways, but the decisions of what projects to pick are totally left up to the grantee, and it's on a grantee to grantee basis. Some of them prioritize, for example, their HVAC systems, because like we go into some buildings where the HVAC is so old that they don't necessarily care about any of the return on investment, anything. They just want to be comfortable in their building, and not pay so much bills for HVAC equipment that barely does anything. So again, just because we work with nonprofits, we're kind of unfortunately we have been kind of on the low-hanging fruit kind of aspect of things, but we're hoping with revamping the financial structures that we're able to offer our grantees, we're hoping to get into more exciting projects where we are able to get the buildings to net zero or whatever.
All right. And this next question is for Bernie. When collaborating with companies, especially smaller companies, what characteristics do you feel like prove a company's credibility and seriousness regarding sustainability?
Yeah, that's an important question to ask and for companies to think about, right? You probably heard the term greenwash and similar things around. I see how to say this. The first comment I would like to make is that we shouldn't be too, let's say, fundamentalist about it, because as much as I have sustainability in my mission statement every day as I get out of my bed, I'm sure there are lots of things I do not sustainably enough, and there's a lot of things I could do better. So from the perspective of helping companies operate more sustainably, I'm willing to work with anybody who gets this about seeing the bigger picture, seeing their impacts on systems, people, communities around them, and want to do better, and we help them there. The important thing, I think, is, and I think on the environmental side, we've made that mistake. I think James made it earlier. These organizations were too much in the face of people, too much in the face of companies, right? And just nowadays that's changed. There's a lot more collaboration, and it's a lot more productive. We understand that you do something over there that we really can't agree with how you handle your workers in Afghanistan, for example, whatever it is. Let's put this aside as we work here and tackle one piece that is important to your particular kind of activity and improve the performance there. And then also work with these companies to help them actually certify these. There are certification tools that so that consumers, investors don't just have to take your word for it, and you can gain credibility for your efforts and bring those into the picture to represent yourself as an organization to the society around you.
Okay, that sounds good. Now here's actually one of my questions that I put down, and this is for Mr. Marlow. How has your skills in sales and marketing and technology benefited you in your pursuit, in your sustainability goals?
Well, I think whatever you're trying to accomplish, you've got to be a good communicator. So, you know, really great sales and marketing people are good communicators, and they're able to understand the goals and mission of the people they're working with and communicate those benefits in a vocabulary with the right message and right messenger. You know, if you go into the room and you're just talking about all the environmental benefits to the CFO and you're not talking about the economics and payback and meeting multiple goals, you're probably not going to be very effective. So I think, you know, understanding how to assess, you know, the needs of an organization, what are their goals, what are the individuals in that group's goals, are they just paying lip service? You know, and the question you asked earlier, how do I measure any organization? Well, what do they say their goals are, and then what are they doing to attain them? You know, are they just providing lip service and lipstick on a pig and then greenwashing, or are they really working towards, you know, as Ray Anderson used to say, climbing Mount Everest of sustainability? You know, they really, you know, trying to get that hard stuff done, not just do they have a recycling program, do they, you know, have a, you know, a bunch of stuff on their website saying how great they are and how in 2050, like if I hear people talking about a 2050 goal without good milestones, you know, that's insulting, I think. You know, that what they're saying is it's somebody else's problem. And that, you know, now you see people moving their goals forward. Amazon did, Cox has done that, you know, so putting realistic, attainable goals with executives with budget to go out and attack those goals. And, you know, regardless of whether you're working with a big company, a small company, or a medium-sized company, you've got to be able to communicate that benefit, sell that benefit. I think is a little less sophisticated way of selling it. You've got to communicate benefits and convince people to join you in that effort.
All right. And I guess I want to ask Bernie this as well. How has your experience in accounting and your education in business helped you in your pursuit, in your sustainability goals?
Well, that follows right of what James just said, right? You have, or to my earlier point about how we measure success, right? Unfortunately, today you got to convince the CFO that you want to do makes sense for the company. So the most I have profited from that is that I can speak that language, and I can try to work from there to get us as a team who are sitting in front of this decision here about the capital investment we want to make, take those other aspects of it into it. Same thing like James just said. I mean, we need to meet people where they are and speak their language, and not, for one, put things in front of them that just close their eyes immediately because it goes somewhere where they don't want to go, and also not forcing them to do what you say and to accept your point of view, even accept your vision. Everybody has a different vision, but to stay with this particular decision you have to make and just ask the right questions. Now, I tell you like this, in my corporate life, I was totally frustrated that I didn't get anywhere with that because I wasn't educated enough. I wasn't smart enough always to get the things into my head that I needed to say. I didn't know the terminology. I couldn't really talk very intelligently about the sustainability they had in mind. I didn't even know what, I felt there was something around there, but I couldn't express it properly. So what did help me in the end was that, you know, to put next to my functional skills on the economic side, I did some research and got some training on the sustainability pieces that allowed me then to bring these things together. which is not to say that I know really how to do this and I do it very well. There's a lot of things I'm sure I still do wrong, but to just learn the talking in terms of engineers, learn the things that add value to what you bring as an engineer to the team as they are relevant to the problem that's in front of you and your team.
Okay, that's good. And here's a question that I had for Mr. Saab. What do you think the future holds for sustainability in the Middle East? Do you ever plan on going back to Lebanon and helping start a sustainability practice there? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Oof. Yeah. Well, very difficult question to answer because I mean you have to know a bit about what's going on in Lebanon to kind of. I really don't know. I always like think about it. Obviously, there's always this yearning to go back, home and improve your home country. But whether I'll do it as a, as a form of business venture, I really don't think that. I might definitely contribute my efforts to, if I see, people like doing the work there in Lebanon, I definitely contribute my effort, my knowledge, my skill, whatever. But I don't see myself going back there and starting a business.
Okay, what about for the rest of the Middle East?
I haven't been following closely. I know like Dubai, Saudi Arabia, they're kind of really focused on it because of their circumstances. They have obviously like ridiculous cooling loads and stuff like that. So like definitely there needs to be, a focus there because of their very harsh living conditions. So I've seen a lot of traction for the industry in Dubai and, like the Gulf specifically.
Okay. Yeah,
especially, I mean, for their countries, as they try to position themselves away from, oil and gas and stuff like that, they're trying to pivot away from that too. So, they need something besides relying on oil and stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And for our next question, we have, I'm not sure who wrote this, but it says, let's say you have one semester to jumpstart a student's career. Is there anything practical you would teach students in a course format? I guess what they're asking is, if you were a student in college again, for a semester, what would you do? What would you have done differently? What would you want to do, and to teach others that would massively benefit their career? And does anyone want to answer this one?
I'll give you some suggestions. I mean, I try to learn something every day. I've been around a while, but I still love learning. I love working with students. But, some of the things I would tell people to do is create a daily self-study. And I would recommend you look at people like Saul Griffiths that I mentioned earlier with Other Lab and Rewiring America. Ezra Klein, who does a great podcast, said the most important book he'd read all year was The Ministry of the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson. I always enjoy reading near-term science fiction, and The Ministry of the Future is basically set in the future, of course, about a group that's trying to fulfill the Paris Accords and how they work with the central banks to convince the true, rulers of the world, how economics can be shifted to have 100-year thinking, and so have 100-year bonds. I would tell you to study a little bit about Buckminster Fuller and look at, really big comprehensive thinkers like Fuller or Professor Odom and learn a little bit about ecology. So I think you need to, have a very, very diverse look at these, creative problem solvers, because we're addressing things we've never addressed before. We've never addressed, this exact type of global pandemic, an economic crisis, inequality crises. How do we pull this together? How do we create new self-organizing teams to do this? So I would look a lot to the Bay Area, which is where an awful lot of creative thinkers go. And I'd look at really innovative organizational structures like OpenAI, which is one of the most innovative structures. They're both a nonprofit, a startup, an academic research team, and a think tank. And they're looking at the world in totally new ways and trying to change the world with AI and not create Skynet. I'd studied obviously leaders like Tesla. Elon Musk is an alien. We can learn a lot from him.
He is. But yeah, that's good. I mean, I love reading sci-fi actually, so I might want to check that out. And I know Buckminster Fuller is a very interesting person, and yeah, that is very neat. So I'll definitely
One of my
check that
favorite
out.
all-time science fiction books, Dune is of course a really science fiction classic.
Oh,
But
I have to
Stanley
read that.
Robinson, he wrote a Mars series, and if you think about the first 100 people to go to Mars and all the things that they have to do to build a new world, and then how they change their thinking even on the way there, really, really fantastic. Set of constructs, how you think about things, in the context of a planetary, like Leah Keynes is a planetologist in the Dune series, and they're thinking about the whole planet. Those are things that are fun to study and think about.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I have to read Dune someday. I know I would like it, but I just haven't been able to yet. But I'll keep that in mind that, hey, Dune is actually might be applicable to our current world situation. So that's very, very interesting. Let's see. We have a few questions for Professor Steffens, but I'm not sure if she's here right now. She is not a guest speaker, but an advisor for oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Yeah, there were some questions for you. I'm not exactly sure if the people who wrote them knew that you weren't a guest speaker,
Oh,
but I guess
okay.
they wanted to ask you. So, yeah, so Professor Stevens, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Professor Stevens. I'm a professor in the construction management department. I currently teach the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing classes and the sustainability classes. We have two. One is new buildings, one is existing buildings. That's it. And I'm the advisor for AEE and the solar decathlon team.
All right, thank you. So the first question for you is, what is the most used sustainable method you use in your business? I'm not sure what the question is asking. So I guess what do you think is the most relevant thing that you teach in terms of sustainability in your classes?
So it's the most relevant?
Yeah, I guess to sustainability and sustainability practices.
Go ahead, Eric.
If she doesn't have an answer, you taught me people, planet, profit.
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the ethics of looking at all those together. You can't, to make ethical choices with those in mind.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go turn on my light because my camera is really dark. But the next question for you is, what type of credentials do you need for your job?
Well, I had to have accreditation in a sustainable suite of standards. So I have 2 lead accreditations, and that allows me to teach those sustainable classes.
And I guess a question for our other panelists here, what are companies looking for in terms of accreditations and credentials when they look for engineers to help out in the company, do sustainable practices? What qualifications would those kind of jobs need? Do any of our panelists want
Well,
to?
you need a full tool set. You know, you need team members from across all disciplines working transdisciplinary. So, you know, you need electrical engineers, you need, water nerds, you need marketers, you need photographers, you need a team working across all disciplines. You need a financial, econometrics person. So, that's one of the keys. You don't want to, put this in one department. We're kind of tribal by nature, and we need to work together more seamlessly.
All right. Then do Mr. Saab or Mr. Burgener have any opinions on that?
I would echo what James said, and in terms of like, if you're, just because I'm, I guess, the closest to being a student, if you're a student and you're looking to land a job, and like, just try to utilize as many of like there's a lot of free online stuff, like just one credential that I think is very useful if you're going to be in this field, and it covers a variety of things. It's called the CEM, Certified Energy Manager. So if you can like study that course online and study that material, you'll have a good just general background. And that's something, that's a credential I've seen pop up a lot. And whether you're a mechanical engineer, whether you're an electrical engineer, I think if you try to get that credential, I think you'll be well positioned for, to be able to pivot into a variety of different roles, just, I guess.
Eric, would you like to say something?
I'm just gonna react a little bit. I was mildly expecting you to say Green Associate, because I know you have one of those. But the CM is interesting because I have one of those, and that made me realize two things. One is there's a fair amount of steam in it, and we're generally headed away from steam. And the other is most of the people that I've talked to about it say something like, "Oh, that's applicable to utilities." So I don't have a lot of experience out there, and I haven't.
If I was looking at a student that wanted a career talk, or I was looking to hire one as an intern, if they were on the solar decathlon team or the electric vehicle team, they had done some hands-on work, something off screens. I think students are too reliant on screens and social, and I want to know that they can communicate, that they can meet deadlines, that they can solve a crisis. Those are the people, creative problem solvers and really fast learners. That's what I look for. Everybody you're going to interview is smart. They may have, really wonderful degrees, or, come from an elite university, but I want to see a creative problem solver who's really, really, a really, really rapid learner of completely new techniques, new products, new technologies, new ways of doing things.
That's good. We have a question coming in from Carrie Jordan. And she said that this question is inspired by a book I read as a kid, La Máquina Maravillosa, Viosa, I hope I pronounced that correctly, The Wonderful Machine. In it, The Wonderful Machine is marketed as not ahead or behind the times, but invented for exactly the right time. It was a TV that showed you exactly what you wanted to see. My question is, what would you see in this machine, and what do you believe it would take to make that happen?
Well, I would respond by, there's a famous, I think it's a Bruce Sterling quote. He said, "The future happens at different places at different times, and it may not have happened here yet." So, there are people in the Bay Area or people in Boston that are working on, if you saw the Boston Dynamics dancing robots the other day, those robots have moves. So the future is happening at a different pace, and, time is working in different places. So, that machine, I think, is naive. It doesn't really work that way. That you have, different cultures adopting different things. Looking back, at history, one of the things I've been studying is, those folks that built the pyramids with no email and no computing, no cell phones. They were pretty damn smart. You know, the people that built cathedrals, you know, that, you know, we think we're so clever because we have these devices, but there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge, you know, in passive solar design and passive building design. We need to look backwards a little bit. Even 100 years ago, there were many techniques that are very applicable today. And, you know, overhang, south facing. South face gets its name from a building that's south facing, uses less energy and is more comfortable. You know, if you have better ventilation, as Eric was touching on earlier, you know, there are many techniques, you know, that we can learn from the past. And biomimicry, you know, is a great way to learn and look to nature. You know, something that's been evolving over eons, you know, has a lot of elegance.
Okay. And for you, Mr. Saab or Bernie, do you have any thoughts on this?
It goes, what this stimulates in my head is it goes a bit to who we want to be, what kind of help we're looking for as we go out there into the real world, so to say, after being a student. And I have sort of a fundamental problem with this picture. Now, there's education, job, retirement. Nowadays, the jobs as a student we would like to train for, they may not even exist in 10 years, or maybe even sooner. So somebody asking the question, what do I need in my last semester? You're not in your last semester. There's lots to learn. And not that I've done all this right, but my advice along those lines, rather than looking for a machine, is you need to, young people, you need to find ways to expose yourself to different environments, different jobs, I didn't know when I graduated who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I barely know now. So to give yourself the opportunity to be challenged by something you thought you'd never going to do, well, it turns out there are actually aspects to this that you might like. Just getting that exposure, taking that break, and allow yourself to learn and to find, not that you find it and then you are, it's a continuous process through your life, but to give a bit more thought to what your purpose really is in all of this. Ultimately, the purpose in life, right? Not to become too philosophical about it, but otherwise you just end up in some treadmill of some sorts, and you look back one time down the road saying, why the heck was I doing all this? That kind of thing. Give yourself the opportunity to learn, to challenge, and progress continuously throughout your life.
Yeah, learning should be a lifelong journey, honestly. And that's what I'm kind of getting from you. Do you want to say something, Eric?
I don't have a well-formed question yet, but I could respond to both James and Bernie.
Okay.
In part because, yeah, I'm a student. That's true, but I'm also 50 years old, and so yes, I've been in an industry that grew, peaked, is that marketplace is gone, right? So and I've also lived long enough to see that careers are becoming more, or maybe not careers, jobs are becoming more and more narrow, right? The more we globalize, the bigger companies get, the more technology we have. Everybody's role gets a little bit smaller. And what I'm seeing thus far is companies are two things. One is they're trying to hire people who are already going to hit the ground running. They don't want to spend the time training, because people don't spend very long in the job anymore, right? I mean, a typical career at a company is 5 years or less, right? So they expect you to already be ready for the role, which means they and you both have to know specifically what the role is. So I know one of my first really long-term job, it wasn't quite the one I was looking for, but it had some of the right aspects, right? And so, to me, I'm not sure that exists so much anymore, where they're looking for what James said is a well-rounded person that can work as part of a team. Maybe they are, but you see job descriptions very tightly written. And again, like when I was talking with that MEP company, they wanted to know whether I was sustainability or I was an engineer, right? They didn't want somebody who can tie it all together.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
Okay.
have a specific question, but I think that these are good questions, and I've seen things change over time, and I'm not sure it's getting better. I do think that people are being forced to do what you're saying, figure out in the last year or the last course where they want to fit in, and I'm not sure that's a good question. I think it's going to go. I think that even if they do in 10, 20 years, it might be gone anyway.
I'll give you a response to that. I'm a 60-year-old student, and I try to learn something every day, and I love working with smart people. I work with some very smart people, and that's very exciting to me. I think you need to focus on mission and purpose and direction, and for me, it's been the phrase I use is a path of progress around innovation, around technology, about taking technology from the lab to business buyers, to nonprofits, to schools. And so I've really done the same thing all the time, but I've done it, with first of all, personal computers and hardware and software, and then just software and digital, and then just internet, and then just with solar energy and solar panels and energy storage and energy management systems. But I've really done the same thing. I'm a technology marketer, and my mission is to make the world a little bit better place. So if I can, help 1 million people. So to think at scale. So not think about doing something niche or small. And, I help people, transition to 1 million personal computers at Lotus Development and IBM and then Yahoo on the internet. We had 1 billion users when I was at Yahoo, literally daily, unique users. And then Radiant Solar and in my other solar work, we've installed over 1 million solar panels. So, I've kind of lived by that purpose and mission, and the companies have changed, the technology has changed, it's evolved, but like I also bring a digital perspective and a software perspective to solar panels. The solar panel is not a very smart device, but if you have a monitoring system that does predictive analytics and you're able to connect that to the internet and be alerted to anomalies, that I'm kind of bridging those things. So that's my approach.
What about you, Mr. Saab? Since you're the panelist that's been, at least the youngest panelist, what do you think jobs are looking for in students and people who recently graduated from college for these industries? Are they looking for a lot of background in a certain role, or are they looking for a balance in a bunch of different, being well-rounded in a bunch of different skills, or maybe a compromise in between? Oh, you're muted, by the way.
You see everything. You see some companies that are looking for very specific roles, but I would echo what James said. Like, being adaptable, I think, is the greatest skill you can work on. The ability to teach yourself. That's what I was able to do, basically. So just to give you an example, I came to Southface on a fellowship role, but because I was very adaptable and I brought my knowledge from the MBA, I brought some tools and programming languages I've learned during the MBA, stuff like that. I incorporated them into my fellowship and improved the Excel sheets we were working on, stuff like that. And that kind of attitude made the company be like, okay, we even though I didn't necessarily have the best sustainability background before my job at Southface, the only strictly sustainability job I did was an internship. So my whole previous career was in the oil and gas services, right? But because that internship combined with the the adaptability that I showed during like my fellowship, which was like about 8 weeks, you know, that kind of proved to them, okay, he doesn't have the background, but he clearly can learn quick enough to where, you know, that, like, I remember, like, you know, my boss sat me down and was like, you basically don't have a learning curve, so, you know, we're just gonna, like, you know, like, they cut my fellowship short and hired me on. So that's the thing, like, you know, the background is important, but a lack of background is not necessarily a killing blow. If you show that you have the ability to adapt around it, I think it's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. Learning how to learn instead of just learning skills. Yeah, that's really good.
I think Rod's a great role model. I mean, he's got a great education with a technical foundation, which is always, to me, the best place to start. But he's also got the MBA in business skills. He's worked in industry. He's worked in nonprofit. He's worked across cultures. I mean, I think he's a great role model for you.
Bernie's been trying to talk.
Yeah, I see you raised his hand earlier. Yeah, what would you like to say?
I actually have a question for James, because we're talking about jobs, getting jobs, terms like career. And I wanted to ask James, what made you decide to actually found and build your own business and become your entrepreneur? And why solar panels?
That's a good question.
Well, you know, when I was a very young student in high school, I did a term paper on solar. And it just seemed so obvious that an abundant, clean, fuel-free risk energy supply makes a lot of sense. And I also ran for United States Congress, so I've done a lot of policy work, and I saw how terrible we were doing. I mean, we fight these wars in the Middle East over oil and energy, and so it's causing, you know, a lack of national security, a lack of economic security, a lack of environmental security. So seldom do such powerful forces come together. And then I looked at the technology and I thought, hey, this looks really, really similar to the personal computer before it happened. You know, that you saw the combinatorial aspects. You know, the computer is a combination of a microprocessor, some software, a graphical user interface, a graphical monitor, a laser printer, and then you connect it to something called the internet, or a local area network first, and then later an internet. So that combinatorial. So solar's doing the same thing. We had a solar panel. We had more efficient inverters. We had a monitoring system. Now we're adding solar and energy storage. And, you know, who knows what's next, you know, but that combinatorial innovation is where you see the win. You know, the electric vehicle, same thing, rapid charging, you know, collision avoidance, so you have safer vehicles, you know, million-mile batteries, you know. So, you know, I saw all those trends coming together, and I was like, hey, this is a great way to create wealth, to solve problems, to live in that path of progress. Unfortunately, I tell people often I started the right company, the right time, which is really hard, the wrong place. You know, the Southeast has been a laggard in solar in many ways, and so pioneers don't make a lot of money. You do a lot of education, you do a lot of pilots. You don't really, what you want to join is really in the growth curve. And if you really want to study how this works, you know, go to Wikipedia and look up Jeffrey Moore, and he'll show you how technologies are adopted. And he's got one of the greatest summaries of how products really work in the real world. And if you understand Jeff Moore, you know, Geoff Moore, you're going to really know some very valuable stuff. And I revisit that periodically. And I've met Jeff and actually spent some time with him, and, you know, have worked with a lot of really, really important people in technology. But Jeff Moore's description of how product adoption occurs, and you have this death valley where many products fail. You know, if you can understand that, you're going to be much better equipped at understanding the accelerating pace of innovation and technology. Brad Feld, who's one of the smartest entrepreneurs, the founder of Techstars, he said, you know, if you look back 20 years ago, the world looks really different today. We didn't have a smartphone. You know, I had a Palm Pilot and a Trio, but they were very crude devices. And he said, 20 years from now, we're not going to recognize a lot. You know, that you're going to see, you know, a lot of bioengineering. You're going to see completely new business models, completely new paradigms, quantum computing. You know, the death of the industrial age, the death of the fossil fuel era, the birth of the, a climate tech era. So, there's a lot going on right now.
We have 9 minutes left, so I really want to encourage anyone who has any lingering questions to ask them. I do have a short question. This seems like kind of like a little fun one. What is your superpower? I guess like if you're a superhero, like what is your superpower?
Well, my superpower is really I'm a translator, and I can work with really super technical people. Software architects, digital architects, engineers in the lab, and then I can go talk to normal people, business people, politicians. I can work in the boardroom, and so that's my superpower. I'm not a researcher, I'm not a scientist, I'm an applied technologist, and so that's really where I add a lot of value.
Applied technologist, I like that. And then for you, Bernie, Mr. Saab, what are your superpowers? All right.
Bernie, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, I unmuted myself. Sorry about that. I was saying I'm still trying to find a place where I can buy it. But I will call it optimism, whether it's resilience, perseverance, something that just lets you get over all those hits you're sure you're going to be getting as you make your way through life. Things will go bad. And to have, wherever you find it, to have those spirits, those thoughts, that environment, whether it's the forest or a lake or a book or a religion or whatever it is that helps you out, to have a source to get up and just keep going, that's very, very powerful.
I actually did have one more quick question for Mr. Saab. You mentioned that you knew some programming languages when you were at South Face. What programming languages did you know and were the most useful? I'm just kind of curious because I have a little bit of a CS background myself.
It wasn't necessarily like I knew C++ kind of, but during my MBA, we learned we had a professor called Vincent Nice who developed software called R Studio. So it's kind of like a graphical interface.
Oh, I know R.
Processing R. So I incorporated that into my work during my internship, and it was very helpful, and it sped up. We were analyzing large databases, and so it just really sped up my data analysis, and so the team was impressed, and that was kind of like one of the reasons that they wanted to keep me on. Just, incorporating different things you learn from other places into your work, that's kind of like a mentality. That's a good mentality to have. I would advise the students as you go into your, careers, always try to like improve whatever you have in front of you, sort of like, so if there's a process that you start working on, always don't just think, oh, this is how the process is. Always think, okay, I'm doing this process. Can I make it any way better? If you start thinking about that, like in every aspect of the work you do, I think you'll definitely like benefit from it.
I feel like there's a term for that. There's a Japanese term for continuous improvement. Let me
Kaizen.
Kaizen. I was about to say, yeah, you're right. So yeah, that is a great philosophy to have. That whatever we do, we could always improve on something, and that's something we definitely need for sustainability, and that's good. Yeah. I remember I've used R once, and I did not enjoy it, but if it's as useful as you say it is, I'll definitely take another look into it.
I don't like R either, but that's because I used R Studio, and that made it so much easier to use because it does all the programming in the background, and then it's just a GUI that you're using. So. Okay,
yeah, that's good to know. But yeah, that's great. So I guess if no one has any other questions, I guess I'll call it the end of the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Special thanks to Bernie for helping us arrange this, and special thanks to Mr. Marlow, Mr. Saab for coming and speaking for us today. if you want to know anything more about AEE, if you want to get in touch with Mr. Saab, Mr. Marlow, or Mr. Burgener, let me know. And yeah, and I can send you information, their contact information, and yeah, you can connect to them further. I've also linked their LinkedIn's on the email I sent out. If you want to talk to them there, I encourage you to just take a look at the profiles. And yeah, just let me know if you want anything else. Thank you for coming, and I
Thank you
hope.
for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Nice job moderating tonight. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Thanks for including me.
Thanks for having us, and great job. Yeah, Lance and the others there putting it together. Great job.
Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.